enthusiasm. I'm going to ask you the same question once we're live. We live, Rashad? How about that? All right, ready, folks? Here we go. Hello, Gen Con 2019, and welcome to building your first commander deck. I'm Gavin Verhey, and I'm going to run you through how to build a commander deck with these fine, well-established gentlemen. And we're going to show off a couple pretty exciting new preview cards for Commander 2019 in the process. How does that sound? I believe I am legally obligated to ask every question twice. How does that sound? That's what I like to see. We're going to start, of course, where all great stories begin, with some introductions. So, without further ado, let me tell you about the great people on this panel and why you should take their advice about building a commander deck. Up first, to my right, Mr. Scott Larabee. Scott, tell us when you got started with Commander.
He's to blame. I got started, I first saw it at a Pro Tour with a bunch of judges playing in the evening afterwards. They were moving tables around, and I walked over and said, "Why are you moving the tables around?" And they were playing Magic, this new format, and I took a look, and then the next Pro Tour I actually played, and Sheldon handed me a deck, and it was off to the races from there. So it's been 14 years I've been playing Commander now.
14 years of building Commander decks?
14 years of building Commander decks.
And you played a pretty good number of them this weekend, I believe.
I have.
Great time. So speaking of plenty of Commander decks, Sheldon Menery, the godfather of the format himself. Sheldon, tell us about how many Commander decks you've brought today.
Did I bring today?
You brought it this weekend, maybe.
I brought 7 this weekend.
How many do you own?
50.
How many of them are all foil?
49.
Sheldon does not fool around. So, Sheldon, talk about, just very briefly, your history with Commander so everyone out there might understand.
I think it's fair to say that I created the format that became Commander. There was an idea that somebody got in a magazine, an old copy of Duelist magazine, but it lay dormant for a number of years. And then one of my friends in Alaska picked it up, showed it to me, eventually was like, I think this thing has some legs, we need to make some changes. And then here we are.
And so there are very few people in the world perhaps more qualified to talk about building a Commander deck than Sheldon himself.
Okay.
But speaking of still very qualified people, we've got Ethan Fleischer. Now, Ethan has a very interesting perspective on Commander, given he's a man on the inside. Ethan, tell us about that.
Right, so I work for Wizards of the Coast as a game designer, and I have worked on the design of more Commander products than anyone else, with the exception of Glenn Jones, my partner in crime for Commander 2019, who I'm tied with.
Right.
So Commander 2019 has the most years of experience designing Commander embedded in the design right there of any of them. I started playing playing Commander before I started playing at Wizards. I think I read an article about it and it sounded really cool. So my play group and we all built Commander decks. I built a Sliver Queen deck and it was pretty awful, and everyone tried to kill me immediately.
Yeah. What year was that?
Oh, I don't remember. It was at least 2010 probably-ish, thereabouts.
And then last, and certainly, well, perhaps not least, we've got this exuberant person, me, Gavin Verhey. I am a Commander architect at Wizards of the Coast, so my job is to oversee all of our Commander products, think about what will go into them, what the theme should be, what they might be missing, and kind of look at the overall deck design as a whole. I was a lead designer on Commander 2017 and Commander 2018. I led design Battle Bond, so I'm always thinking about these kind of Commander-focused decks. And Sheldon and Ethan and Scott and I all work very closely together. Sheldon and Scott being on the Commander Rules Committee, and Ethan being a fellow designer. We work really close. For example, when we were working on Commander 2019, this year's, I was the one who told Ethan we're going to do mechanics. And it was up to Ethan to figure out which mechanics we were going to do, but I told Ethan mechanics. And then he had to scramble and try a bunch of stuff out and decide that Soul Shift was not the right one to use and all these other things. But
Banding. You missed the chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, banding.
Would have been great.
We'll save that for the next rung, the next rung of decks, perhaps. But we're also excited to be here today, and what I want to start by talking about is when you first think about building a Commander deck, what are the things you immediately start thinking about? Sheldon, with you, where do you even begin? Like, you have to build 100 cards, it's singleton. How do you even start that process?
Well, I subtract 37 right away because I know there's going to be lands. I usually build top down, so I'll see a card that I want to base a deck around. Most of the times it's a commander. Sometimes it's just a card. One of my most well-known decks, You Did This to Yourself, started as building a deck around paraelectric feedback. It's like I want a deck that does what this card does. So, but for the most part, it's top down. A new commander comes out. We get really exciting choices in each set, whether they're monocolored or multicolored. And then, what do I want to do with this deck? And usually, what do I want to do with this deck that I know that not everybody else is going to do?
Now, for the audience, paraelectric feedback, for those of us, I know what it does, absolutely. But for those of us who don't, what does this card do? Just describe how you started with this idea for a deck.
Paraelectric feedback deals damage equal to the converted mana cost of a spell to someone.
So I cast an Emrakul, and you're like, paraelectric feedback that.
Well, it was more in response to the Exsanguinate for 30.
Oh, yeah, that does sound brutal. I thought I was going to win the game, and instead,
that'll teach
you are going to win the game. Ethan, how about you? When you're designing a commander deck, especially one internally, where do you begin? Like, what parts do you start working on?
I tend to think about having a big theme that feels like it can stretch over a bunch of cards. I like having a strong theme because it encourages me to maybe stretch out a little bit and play with some cards that I'm not going to see in everyone else's deck. So I love it, like, I'm going to build around a mechanic, for instance, or I'm going to build to a creative theme. And that way I just get to get some cards and people are like, what? What's that card? What's that? How does that work? I don't remember this card. So that's exciting.
I think the best commander decks are the ones where other players have to read your cards.
Oh, yeah.
I believe you said yesterday in one of the panels you should get a point every time someone else has to read one of your cards, right? And that's a really great feeling. Because what I love about Commander is there are all these old cards that you might never touch otherwise that get to go into your decks. You've got like a bear tribal deck, Ethan, is that right?
Yeah, I have a bear tribal deck. It's a teamer deck with Surak Dragonclaw in charge, and it has every single card in the color identity that has a bear in the art, and of course every card that is a bear or makes a bear token also.
And Scott, what about you? Where do you begin?
It's similar to Sheldon. I tend to go top down. Sometimes it's around a card. I start off with slots, so I have 40 lands, 30 creatures, 30 spells. That's where it starts, and then it'll adjust depending. Like I have a deck I'm playing currently. It's a skeleton ship deck that has no creatures in it, so it's more like 40-60. And then whether enchantment, how many enchantments, how many artifacts go in, really depends on the theme of the deck. Sometimes I'll see a commander and go, ooh, I just get a spark goes off. Oh, usually it's just another card. I did this when I built my Brian Stoutarm deck originally. I was like, Brian Stoutarm, Sarah Avatar, 98 more cards. Perfect. Easy to go. Where it wasn't a commander so much was when my current Sea Monsters deck, I wanted to put Stormtide Leviathan in a deck, so I started just looking up all the Krakens and see what they did, and I came across all these cards that referred to Krakens and serpents and octopuses and leviathans, and went, well, that sounds like a thing. So I made a big blue-green Sea Monsters deck, which I didn't even have a commander for. I had to run this weird commander to get the colors until you handed me Arixmathes to design, which then when I designed Arixmathes, I was designing a commander for a deck I already had, which was really cool. So
sometimes
you get to do cool things when you work at Wizards. Yes.
I'm sure Ethan will agree. Getting to design cards means often, what does my deck need? I should make. Because the thing is, it sounds a little like self-serving, but also if I need it, I'm sure someone else out there in the world also needs it.
Yes,
right?
That's absolutely where I start when I'm on it. I've been on 4 design teams, and I always start with, how can I make my current decks better?
So, Scott, you mentioned red and white.
Yes.
So you're a huge red and white fan. You mentioned building around a commander. And to me, when I start building a commander deck, I often start with the commander. I always like to think about my commander, what I'm going to build from. So today we've got a real treat for you. We're going to show off a brand new commander from Commander 2019. It's red and white, so we're going to see what we can do. And a big request we've gotten, and Ethan and I hear this all the time. I'm sure you and Scott.
From me and Sheldon, actually.
Yeah. And I'm sure both of you will both tell us as well as hear it too. Red-white needs more things to do that aren't just attacking.
Right.
Things that are not all about attacking. So we have kind of a triple threat in Commander 2019. We've got someone who's red and white, not all about attacking, a really fun build around, and also one of the best known story characters in all of Magic the Gathering history. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show it off, because I know right now I can't see the chat, but I'm sure the chat is just like, show us the card, show us the card, show us the card, show us the card.
Let's go on for another minute.
Yeah, right.
So I can say show us the card a lot more times. But we're going to show you the card. I will note we have
It's just scrolling.
we have 2 preview cards for you today. So we're going to start by showing you this card, talk about it for a while, and then if you can hang around till later on, we'll show you another preview card. So your patience will be rewarded. But for now, I think I've been teasing people all weekend long with Gerard. I've talked for a long time. It's finally time. Here we go. It's time for Gerard's card where you will finally get a good version. Gerard, Weatherlight Hero. Check this out. Gerard, Weatherlight Hero. He will protect his legacy at all costs.
Yes.
So you see this card. It's a 4-mana 3/3. When it dies, he'll exile it. It'll go back to the command zone when you do that. So it's hanging out in the command zone, which is great. And you get to return all artifacts and creatures that were put there from the battlefield this turn. What do you start thinking about immediately? What are the things when you see this legend that you want to build around?
Sweepers.
Right. Right. You cast your Wrath of God or your Blasphemous Act or something, and everything comes right back.
Yep. That's certainly where I'd start, and then secondarily, I want to make sure that a lot of the creatures and maybe even artifacts in my deck are things that I can either get into the graveyard actively or that have a cool come into play ability when they come back. So that's where I want to start.
Right. Oh, and we've got a picture of the chat
Yes,
up
of
there.
the chat, yes.
Yeah, people.
Yeah, Wrath of God Tribal.
People have
Vehicle. I thought about vehicles when I
Planar
saw this
cleansing
card,
is-
actually,
yeah.
Planar
I
cleansing.
like,
yeah.
I like where that person's going.
Austere Command would be a good one.
Yeah. Chroma's Vengeance.
Yes.
Yeah, Chroma's Vengeance. I mean, you mentioned enters the battlefield effects. Any artifact that has enters the battlefield effect will work out great here. Any creature that does will work out great. So you could almost build a red-white flickery style deck if you wanted to with this, right?
Yep.
Sheldon, what are some directions you think about taking this?
Well, the first thing that it says to me, sorry, is cheap artifacts that you can sacrifice to get in the graveyard.
Yep.
So I'm thinking also of
Chromatic Star.
Pentad Prism, those kind of things that
Spell bombs.
Spell bombs you sacrifice to give you an advantage, and then just bring them all back. You could practically do it nearly every turn, and they're providing the amount of mana that you need to do it again and again and again and again and again. What's the one that doesn't? It's 2 mana, enters the battlefield. You go search for a land, and then when it leaves play, you search for another land.
Mycosynth Wellspring, I believe.
Mycosynth Wellspring. All the Wellsprings, I think, go here in Gerard. Mind Stone.
Hedron Archive, Dreamstone Hedron,
Yeah.
all that
Those are
kind of
good,
stuff. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, if you wanted to, I know I would not personally condone this as someone who plays a lot of multiplayer Commander, but I'm sure some of you in the chat are more competitive Commander players. If you wanted to make a Second Sunrise style eggs deck here, I'm sure you could do that all kinds of shenanigans, which we will leave to people not on the stage to figure out.
Yeah.
But I feel very confident that
Thank you.
there's some shenanigans to be had there. Ethan, how about you?
Well, I tend to start thinking about sacrifice outlets, like what about Goblin Bombardment? Seems like a very natural fit to this kind of deck. Sacrifice all your stuff, get it all back. I tend to prefer a proactive game plan where I'm kind of working on my own stuff. So like the Wrath of God tribal thing, I'll probably put some Wrath of Gods in there, but just doing that every turn doesn't appeal to me very much because I do like the rest of the table to be able to, have their decks do their thing. So I would be, I'd be more interested in only interacting with my own board for the most part.
Ooh, how about Arcbound Tribal?
Ooh, Arcbound Tribal.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Arcbound.
Yeah,
That's nice.
Arcbound. Yeah, Arcbound.
That's nice.
Artifact creatures is a very interesting way. to go with
Artifact
this.
creatures,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
you make them bigger, and they keep coming back.
It's finally time for Arcbound Ravager to hit the commander tables. The card has never gotten played anywhere, and it's just finally time for it to turn on the corner. I
Arcbound
think.
Ravager's time to shine. That poor guy.
Waited years to finally play with my set of Arcbound Ravagers. What are some of the things you would not put in this deck? So if you're building a red-white deck, often in Commander, you're like, okay, here are the staples I'm going to put in this. What are some things that might not make as much sense to include as normal? Everything is contextual, so.
I wouldn't want to go wide on tokens.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Tokens not so strong with this.
No,
Right.
not at all.
That's
Well,
a really good point.
it's red-white. There aren't that many staples.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fair number of enchantment. Like you might want to avoid enchantments that didn't specifically interact with the theme. Like maybe Martyr's Bond would be okay, but there are a lot of other ones that just don't really do anything
I
here.
think Warstorm Surge would be pretty good.
Oh, Warstone Search or Pandemonium or anything like that, yeah.
All right, well, maybe some
Panharmonicon would be pretty
enchantment.
good in this deck too, by the way.
Panharmonicon. What can't that card do?
I know. It does everything. Yeah.
Now, Ethan, you mentioned Martyr's Bond there for a second. and Perhaps it was unintentional, but of course, Gerard, one of the biggest martyrs of them all.
That's
Do you want to tell very briefly the story of this character? Because for some people in the audience, we got so excited about building around it, we're like, oh my gosh, let's talk about this. But this was the face of Magic, or one of the two main faces of Magic for a very long time. Regale us as the Dominarian lore master.
Oh, sure.
Tell us a bit about Gerard, his story, and how this card perfectly encapsulates what he did in the story.
So Gerard is a Banalish hero. He's of the Capuchin clan, and he was part of a genetic experiment that Urza, the famous planeswalker, conducted in various places in Dominaria. So he's somebody whose birth was planned by this sinister planeswalker, and he's part of and owner of the Legacy, which is this collection of artifacts that individually are mostly relatively unassuming, but when combined together can create a potent weapon to defeat Yawgmoth, the leader of Phyrexia. Unfortunately, in order to fire the Legacy weapon, Gerard has to sacrifice his life. He's part of that legacy, and it's a one-shot weapon, and he's the ammunition essentially. So, in this this version of the card, when he dies, he saves everyone else. He's rescued the entire multiverse from the Phyrexians.
A fun fact about this design in particular is we were trying to get Gerard just right. It was really, really important we got Gerard right because his first card, not so hot, I think we can all agree.
Yeah, he had a legendary creature in the Apocalypse set that was extremely underwhelming, I would say. Is a
Right,
good
the hero of the
description.
story, and here's this 4-mana 3/4 that with very, very little relevant abilities. So we tried a lot of designs like from the team, but where this card ended up coming from is internally we have a design resource group that's full of people who are not on the core team. And they actually all sat in a room, about 10 or 15 amateur designers, sat in a room and hammered together through someone named Kyle O'Neill to come up with this card. So this was the result of not just the designers, but like us, Ethan and I, but really some of the best minds at Wizards from across the company trying to come up with something really cool to do here, which is really unique. And I'm so glad we finally got it.
Just to note in the art here, this is a beautiful piece by Zach Stella.
Absolutely.
I love it. But hidden in the orange areas behind Gerard, you can see all the different characters, all the different members of the Weatherlight crew, which Gerard was a member of the Weatherlight crew, and they're sort of hidden in the shape of the Weatherlight. That's the Weatherlight, in forward view. So if you look inside there, you can see Karn and Captain Sisay and Squee and all those folks.
So if you were to start sketching this deck skeleton out, let's say you start with Scott's method, I think it's a pretty good one, 40 lands, so that's 40 cards right off the bat. And just like any commander deck, if you're building red-white, what are the cards you're going to put in for sure? Sol Ring, right? You're going to start there.
Well,
Probably.
Certainly for an artifact deck.
Certainly for an artifact deck. And what are some of the other just staple cards you'll rattle off the top of your head that'll go into this kind of archetype?
Mind Stone.
Yeah, I mean, red-white has problems with mana. So Wayfarer's Bauble and Myriad Landscape, just things that are traditionally in green that you want to get into red and into red-white.
Solemn Simulacrum,
Oh yeah.
for sure.
Oh yeah, Solemn's
We're
great.
coming
That guy
and
seems
going.
great here.
It's perfect for this thing.
You blink that guy, it comes back,
Yeah,
you draw
yeah.
a card, you get
Yep.
another land.
Yeah,
That's
it's
perfect. So moving off of Gerard for a second, what are so let's go through some of the other colors, green, blue, and black. If you're building a green commander deck, what are a few staples that most of the time you're just going to want to include in your green-based commander deck?
Kodama's Reach, Cultivate.
Cultivate.
and maybe even run the mana cost arc. Rampant growth, cultivate Kodama's reach, Skyshroud Claim.
Explosive vegetation depending on your colors. Skyshroud Claim is another excellent one that gets them untapped. Hunting Wilds, I think, an underappreciated
Ranger's
card.
Path is even good. It's the sort of unbroken Skyshroud Claim.
And those are all the 2 to 4 mana cards that ramp you and get you more lands on the battlefield.
Sylvan Scrying doesn't get mentioned a lot when talking about those, but I like to run Sylvan Scrying because sometimes I don't want to get a basic. I want to get something else.
Right, Sylvan
So it
Scrying
works in there,
will get you any land out of your deck
Any
into your
land,
hand,
yeah.
including all the great non-basics you might run. How about you, Ethan? What are some green
I
staples?
think
Besides River Bear, which I know is very important.
Crater Hoof Behemoth is a very popular card I've seen played in green decks. It's a little much for me. I tend to think it's maybe a little too strong. It ends too many games for my taste. But games do have to end eventually.
Yeah.
And Crater Hoof Behemoth costs enough mana that it's not going to be coming down on the first couple of turns usually, unless something really weird has happened.
Pretty useless on the first couple of turns
true.
too.
So,
Okay, what about blue? Blue staples that'll go in almost every commander deck you make. We'll start at the end this time and come forward. Ethan is the Blue Council of Colors representative, so I feel like we should start with him. Ethan,
Right
what
of
do you have?
Replication is a huge one. That's always just an enormous impact when that happens, and it's crazy. It's probably too powerful for Commander, but it's also like cool because it's different every time. It's always something different, and that's the fun of clone effects is that you get to play with your opponent's cards this time.
Mana Drain.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
That's a powerful magic card.
Slightly more affordable, I'd say Mystic Confluence, because it's flexibility. In multiplayer games, you never know what's coming at you, so you can't really always build linear decks. You have to have cards that give you options, and Mystic Confluence is a card that gives you plenty of options that you really like no matter what.
Right, drawing cards, countering spells, or
Bouncing
bouncing
creatures.
things, all extremely important at
Yeah.
different stages of your commander game.
Yep. For me, it'd be Cyclonic Rift.
That's a powerful card, I
and
suppose.
I like personally, I like propaganda, so I want to keep people away early on. So.
Yeah, Cyclonic Rift, perhaps one of the most hot-button topics
Yep.
Yes.
among commander players, but we won't get into that here
Nope.
necessarily. And then black, one more time. What are the black staples you would include in most commander decks?
Demonic Tutor.
Erebos, God of the Dead.
Yep.
I love the 2-card combo of Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Cabal Coffers to just generate tremendous amounts of mana.
I do too. Mr. Menery would disagree, I think. We've had words before.
I mean, I like it when I do it.
Now, Scott, you mentioned Demonic Tutor.
Yep.
Why are tutors so strong in Commander? Demonic Tutor, of course, 2 mana, get any card from your deck into your hand.
Yeah.
You see these kind of cards all over Commander decks. If you're building your first Commander deck, maybe it's not clear why you would want to have something like that. What makes Demonic Tutor so integral?
Well, in the late game, they can get you your win condition. In the early game, they can help you set up. So, I mean, about a third of the time that I use a Demonic Tutor, I go get a land with it.
Yep.
Because I'm short. Like, I'm stuck on 3 or 4, and I get that. I'm like, oh, now I can get to 5. So, I use it for land a lot, and that's what I like about it.
Go find your Cabal Coffers, perhaps.
Go find my
as-
if
as
I have
you
my
suggested.
Urborg. Yes, if I have my Urborg, I can go get my Cabal Coffers, or I can go get.
So I'm curious, how many of you in the audience have demo tutored for a land? Yeah.
I mean, it's not what I want to do, but it's there when I need it.
Hey, you mentioned a moment ago how great Sylvan Scrying is. It's basically
Yeah.
just Sylvan Scrying at that
It is
point,
Sylvan
right?
Scrying, yeah. And there's a Sylvan Scrying everybody can use. It's Expedition Map, which would also be good in this deck.
Oh, Expedition Map would be excellent with Gerard.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Gerard, so let's say you're newer, you're trying to build a commander deck, and you've got Gerard sitting here. You want to build something. Sometimes you're just going to have booster packs lying around. You're going to try to crack one, and you're going to see what do I have that can go into my deck? Like what could fill out those last few cards I need? Does anyone have a pack we can use as an example?
Oh, I have a pack.
Do you have a pack?
Yeah,
Cool.
right here. This
Yeah.
is
Of course, at 2020.
Core Set 2020 pack, the latest Magic set.
How about Modern Horizons?
Oh, well.
That's a good one.
Okay.
So
I
fine.
got that all
Modern
beat, though.
Horizons.
I have Ultimate Master. It's got to be something good in here.
Oh,
I don't.
man.
Yeah, I don't.
It's
think
the
I,
Ultimate set.
I don't know that I. Oh, you know what? I've got this Legends booster here. If we could, I'll let the audience choose which pack we should open. Who wants to open Core Set? One guy in the back. You're a good man. Who wants to open Modern Horizons? Who wants to make Scott open Ultimate Masters and I get to keep the Legends booster? Who wants to open the Legends booster? All right, so we're going to open this live right now. And we're going to see, now, Legends, a long time ago, not necessarily the most powerful set by today's standards, but we'll talk through the cards a little bit and see what in here could possibly make it. And I hope there's a moat, because that would definitely go in there. Wow, cracking a Legends booster. It's not every day.
No.
Not every day you get to do this. All right, let's see what we got. Thank you. All right. Oh, the first and most important card, Sheldon, I believe is this card. The
rules
new
card?
Magic the Gathering rules specific to Legends cards card. It tells you about bands with other,
Yep.
Rampage,
Yeah.
multicolored cards, Enchant World,
Yep.
and of course, Legends and Legendary
Legends.
Lands,
Yes.
which is where this whole thing started, right? Elder Dragon Legends from Legends.
From Legends.
But I feel like this is pretty outdated, so let's continue going. We've got Lesser Werewolf. He's not going to make our red-white deck, that's
No.
for sure. Yeah, he gets -1/-0 counters. We've got Riven Turnbull. Perfect. Riven Turnbull. He's a blue-black legend that taps for... just to give you an idea of what existed back in the day. He's a 7-mana 5/7 that taps for a black mana. So I think we're gonna Lesser Werewolf and Riven Turnbull.
Some
can go be in
good
a commander deck
blue-black
together.
ramp.
Yeah.
That's utterly useless.
Now this is not going to make it, but it is a solid card. We've got Pendlehaven. Right
Oh,
here.
yeah.
I
Now
play
that's
that in
an
Commander.
exciting open, Original Legends Pendlehaven. I played that many times, but still not going into our red-white deck.
No.
Now we're getting somewhere, everybody.
All right.
Finally on the right track. Who's ready for Elder Landworm?
Elder Landworm.
Elder Landworm, here it is. It's a 7-mana 5/5 trampler, and it can't attack until it's blocked once. What do you guys think? In with Gerard? Is that hanging out in Gerard's deck?
It's the best thing we've seen so far. I'll give it that.
Let's keep going.
We've got a Void Fate, which counters a spell and it's green, which is weird, but not for our deck. We've got Flash Flood, also not going to work. We do have now. Check this out. How about Crimson Kobolds?
Oh, there we go.
First time a
Nice.
Kobold has graced the stage up here so far this weekend.
Not at all.
0 mana cost 0/1. Any chance that makes it in?
If we're going with a sacrifice theme, if like Goblin Bombardment is part of our plan, maybe.
Oh, that's actually not bad.
Because we
right?
could go Enduring Renewal Kobolds.
Yeah.
Yes, like
Some
play a bunch of
sort
kobolds,
combo
sack into
engine type of thing. I could see it.
Yeah. Plus, you get to play with Crimson Kobolds, so that's pretty sweet. We've got Dirkwood Boars.
They're green.
4 mana 4/4, not making it. Chain Lightning.
Okay.
Now, here's actually a great discussion topic. So, Chain Lightning, incredibly powerful Magic card. It's essentially a sorcery lightning bolt.
Right.
1 red mana, deals 3 damage. This is played in Legacy. It's played all the way back in Magic. It's been around since the beginning. But you don't see cards like this, direct damage, played a lot in Commander. Scott, why is that?
Because they're one-shots. You can't reuse them. It's very hard to reuse those cards. And in a multiplayer game, they might send it back at you because somebody else is probably playing red. So Chain Lightning itself has that additional weakness. But I think the big thing there is it's just a one-shot removal, one-shot spells like that are just hard to get back in most decks. You have to build around it, and even then it's really hard.
Right, I mean, if you're targeting someone's life total, they got 40 life to deal with,
Right.
so 3 is not that much. And if you're doing it as a removal spell, well, the game's going to go on for a long time.
Right.
You're spending 1 card to kill off one of their cards. I mean, it's not always the best idea. So great for one-on-one play, not so awesome if you're trying to play multiplayer Commander.
Yeah, if I have a removal spell that just kills one thing, I want it to be instant speed because I want to kill the creature that's attacking me, not the one that might attack me or might attack
Right.
someone else.
Wall of Shadows, not going to cut it. It's a black card. Although I'm saying my Riven Turnbull deck is really coming along over here. I think we're finally getting somewhere. Flash counter. Oh my gosh, guys.
Counters an instant, right?
Crookshake Kobolds is here.
More
We're
kobolds.
well on our way.
More
We are
kobolds.
well
More
on our
kobolds.
way to having enough kobolds for a Goblin Bombardment deck. We've got Giant Turtle, a green card we're not going to play. We've got the Evelyn Archer, which taps to deal a damage. It's legal, but I don't think we're going to play it.
Right.
And then we've got these ghosts that make a creature smaller. So all in all, I'd say that we've done a great job at kickstarting our Kobolds Commander deck.
Right.
Yeah.
So
In a very typical Legends booster.
Yeah.
did you open your pack, Scott?
I did.
Anything good in there for
Not
a Gerard
really.
deck?
So the red and white cards, I got no artifacts. I got an elemental token, although in the right color, not very good. I got a Sky Spear Cavalry, which is a flying double striker, so maybe. I got a Fiery Temper with Madness.
Right. Once again, a 3 damage spell that is probably not going to get played that
and
much.
I got a bunch of enchantments. I got a Raid Bombardment.
Face Fetters, that one sees play sometimes.
Face Fetters, yeah.
It's good at shutting down Planeswalkers.
Sigil of the New Dawn.
Now that could actually...
That's pretty good, actually.
That could actually
yeah.
work, right? So,
Yep.
so Sigil of the New Dawn says whenever a creature of yours dies, you can pay 2 mana and get it back.
Get it back.
Which, when
if
you've got
you're
a
not
bunch
ready
of,
to do that yet,
Yeah.
maybe is really good, yeah. I got a God's Willing, protection from color till end of turn, scry 1. That's it.
Well,
And then I got one blue card, a bunch of black and green cards.
Well, we can look at the Sigil or the Face Fetters, perhaps.
I
Good
think
stuff.
we need to go back to Elder Landworm.
Yeah, Elder Landworm, man.
I got a pretty good card in my pack. So
Oh,
here's
that's perfect.
Retributive Wand, 3 mana artifact. You can spend 3 and tap it to deal 1 damage to any target, but that's not the good part. The good part is when Retributive Wand is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to any target. So if you had some sort of sack outlet, you could deal 5 to something and then recur this with Gerard. So this has some potential, I think.
Oh yeah, that's pretty nice actually. Well, you got the best card of any of us for your Gerard deck.
Yeah,
Good
suck
work,
it, Legends.
It turns out that newer sets might have a little more cooking for it. You got anything over there in your?
I don't
Modern
think there's
Horizons
anything here. Farmstead Gleaner is a scarecrow, so we might go Scarecrow Tribal here.
Sure, get the Scarecrow.
deck? Scarecrows, huh?
Who knew Gerard was the king of the scarecrows?
There's a Lance Sliver, and no, that's the wrong colors. Yeah, the Farmstead Gleaner is about the only thing.
Well, it's very fitting you opened a Scarecrow, Scott, because we've got another preview card
We
for
do.
everyone out there, and it's a Scarecrow.
How about
so
that?
that's something kind of out there. Really fast, let's talk about mana ramp in Commander. Why is mana ramp so important to this format? Ethan?
Well, I've noticed that stumbling on mana in Commander is death. The person who misses their first land drop frequently is the person who loses, which is one of the reasons that red-white struggles so much.
Right.
Like, you can hit your land drops either by directly ramping or just by drawing extra cards so that you just naturally draw extra lands. And red-white is pretty bad at both of those things. So it's just key to have the power to cast multiple spells per turn, to activate multiple things per turn, or to cast really big spells in your turn. Just because you need to have big, impactful turns. If each opponent has a turn for every one of yours, so you need to play big or go home. So you need lots of mana for that.
Well, and plus being able to reuse non-basic lands, especially in a format full of really powerful non-basic lands, is equally strong.
Yeah, I mean, one of the real important things is that there are a lot of board wipes in Commander. So there are a lot of, certainly back in the day, Nevniral's Disc and Oblivion Stone were huge. And other stuff goes away. Usually when you land ramp, not too many people are playing land destruction. And if they are, they're generally winning right away anyway, so it doesn't matter. Excuse me. The lands stay around when mana rocks will go away.
And you mentioned Oblivion Stone, by the way. That's quite a card with Gerard.
Yeah,
Blow
that might be
everything
good
up.
there. I was just thinking the
Gerard
same thing.
dies, gets back Oblivion Stone.
Yeah. Gerard
I might do that.
probably wants
Yeah.
both Disc and O-Stone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another way you can do it. Is artifact sweepers are really, really nice with this. Well, anyway,
Oh, there's the white one. Scour, some kind of scour?
Sunglass or
Scouring
Hourglass.
Yeah.
And then you've got Magus of the Disc as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, artifact mana ramp, staple of Commander. Cards like Wayfarer's Bauble shows up a lot.
Yep.
All these kind of things that are kind of ubiquitous among decks. So we're going to show you a preview card from Commander 2019. It's a Scarecrow, as mentioned, so that's exciting for me because I love Scarecrows. And it's the common. So this appears in every one of the Commander decks. And I think you'll find it's quite powerful. Check out Scaretiller. So whenever it becomes tapped, you either get to bring a land from your hand into play or a land from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, what are some lands that might go to the graveyard that you could bring back that are pretty powerful?
Fetch lands.
Right, so with fetch lands, it means every turn you can just ramp when this guy attacks.
Strip mine.
Strip mine.
Evolving Wilds.
Myriad
Wasteland.
Myriad Landscape.
Myriad Landscape. My favorite new card.
If you play this way, Dark Depths is one
You're
that
right,
you can get right back.
If you're going to be that guy, sure.
You can be that guy. Being able to, just reuse these lands every single turn. I mean, any of the Odyssey era sacrifice lands you can reuse. Even just a creature that allows you to sacrifice lands, it means you'll always have something to pull back. Crucible of Worlds, incredibly powerful card. This is kind of letting you do that every turn, as long as you can attack with it, or even just tap it for that matter.
And it doesn't count against your land drop, so whenever it becomes tapped. I'm thinking opposition already.
Freed from the reel on this, right? Pay a blue, tap it, play a blue, untap it, pay a blue, tap it. There's all kinds of fun possibilities left with this guy. And you'll find one of those in all 4 of the Commander decks. So
Glare of Subdual.
It's pretty exciting stuff. I would expect to see that in a number of decks going forward. So here are our 2 preview cards, Gerard and Scaretiller. Hopefully you all enjoy them. Are you excited about them? Whoa, so exciting. Well, we've got about 10 minutes or so left. So if you have any questions you want to ask us, either about building a Commander deck or anything else, we've got a microphone right there. Please feel free to line up in front of it, and we'll answer your questions and perhaps give away some of the contents of these boosters in the process. So who out there has a question for us? We've got one right back here. If you wouldn't mind just walking over to the microphone. That way the entire internet can also hear your voice. So speak carefully.
Hang on. There.
We turned on the microphone.
Sheldon.
Yep.
In the beginning, you mentioned building around a particular general or around a particular card sometimes. So let's say you find a card like Astral Slide that you just want to build around. It's not easy because that's one of your 99. So how do you make it so that your deck works when you don't draw that one particular card?
Generally, the idea is to make the deck about what the card does, not necessarily that single card, but like the paraelectric feedback example, that it became everything was a retributive strike. Everything was, reflect damage, and take the idea and then expand it into what other Magic cards do the same thing.
So in the example of the Astral Slide card, you would put a bunch of blink effects or a bunch of cards that care about cycling in a deck?
Exactly.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, our good friend and sound engineer Rashad Miller has a wonderful Astral Slide deck.
And by wonderful, we mean oppressive.
The other thing is, too, you can often find redundancy, right?
Yes.
So there are some cards that are wholly unique and hard to find more copies of. But even with the case of Astral Slide, you have Astral Drift. You've got Lightning Rift as another card that cares about you cycling cards. You've got a number of creatures that like it when you cycle things. So you can find ways to kind of have a whole theme without having to rely on finding an individual card.
Yeah.
And also at the end of the day, that's where your tutors come in, Scott, right?
Yes,
That's where
absolutely.
your Enlightened tutor, for example, or Idyllic tutor really come in handy.
Yeah, but I think doing what Sheldon mentions, which is finding the cards that are in the same space, is way more fun than tutoring for them.
Yeah.
Because then you get them more often, which is even more fun.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the question. Ethan, you want to hand him your core set booster pack? Or Adine will help run it over. Next question, please.
So I basically got into Magic because I enjoy Planeswalkers. And I know that's not the theme today, but with 2 of the Rules Committee members here, I did want to ask what the conversation is like behind the scenes, if there even is one, about ever allowing more Planeswalkers to be commanders.
Well, yes, there's a conversation. there's a big conversation. I think we're pretty firm that Planeswalkers as commanders isn't going to be great for the format. We know that Planeswalkers are the face of Magic. We know that you love your Planeswalkers, and we also know that our friends in R&D are going to make future cards that say may also be may be played as your commander. We know you're like your Planeswalkers. If we made them commanders, there's a bunch of them we'd have to ban. You don't want Narset coming out of the command zone, for example.
I'm okay with this.
I didn't hear you.
I'm okay with this. Ban all you like.
And Ethan and I have talked quite a bit from the Wizards design perspective, and we're happy to maybe a little more liberally, if we want, say this Planeswalker can be your commander, if we feel it's appropriate, right? Like we didn't do it in War of the Spark because there's so many Planeswalkers and so on, but if we felt like there was a good opportunity and a character that deserved it, we could absolutely put that on there and find more places.
And I think the answer that fellow Rules Committee member Gavin Duggan gave yesterday on this question is valid. Planeswalkers as commanders slow down an already lengthy format. The format, the part of the format that most of us love are the sort of dirtly games. Planeswalkers just make them even more dirtly. They get really, really long because you have to deal with them. So instead of attacking the players, you're attacking the Planeswalkers. And I got to tell you, when Planeswalkers first came out, that was my thought, was these are like little mini fogs because people are going to want to attack them.
Well, yeah, and a legendary creature as your commander is inherently anything that has power and toughness can attack a player, whereas a lot of Planeswalkers cannot move the game along in that way. So there's that also slows things down.
Great question. Thank you very much. We'll make sure you get to some kind of reward. Scott or Sheldon, if you'd like to divvy up your pack. Yes, next question, please.
You can't have my hotel key, though.
Oh. So my question is for all of you.
You can have that very nice modern Masters pack.
I've been playing Commander since Lorwyn, maybe, and I still am having trouble with certain aspects of the deck building. Like I could completely plan out what my deck wants to do, but finishing the game is always a struggle for me. And I was wondering if any of you had any specific parts of building decks that you feel like you're still trying to get right after all this time.
Right, so that's a tricky question. How do you finish out a game of Commander? How do you build your deck to be able to take it to phase 3, 4, 5? What's the secret there, Sheldon?
You have to think of finishers. I have the same problem you do. I get caught in the theme, and then I have 130 cards in front of me, and none of them is actually going to win the game. So, I mean, that I'm not the biggest fan of infinite combos. But at a certain point, on turn 13, some sort of combo is fine. So you have to think about what you want to do. I mean, I think good aggressive decks can close out games, but they got to do a lot of damage. So I think you still go along with what your deck wants to do and find a way to finish it that way.
Really great question. Thank you. Come up and grab the Legends booster. This one's actually for you. It was a great question. We have time for maybe one more question. Yep. Come on up.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hello.
So my question is this. I started playing Magic just last year here at Gen Con. I've played maybe one game of Commander, but I love the idea of the format. If you have any advice for players who are younger and inexperienced to the system and the legacy that is the Magic the Gathering game, what advice would you have for people who are now looking to get cards from older sets, who maybe don't understand the environment which they were developed, the rules that kind of built them, and what basically looking into these new powerful sets looking back?
We all have such photographic memories for the whole game, but if you're newer, you don't know all these old cards necessarily. So how do you go about figuring out what to put in your deck where you don't even know where to start or what even exists?
There's a really great website called Scryfall, which you can enter all kinds of search terms in. So and you can set the color identity of what the results are going to be also. So if we were going to build around Gerard here, we could search for cards that are in the red-white color identity and look for certain words in the rules text that seem like they could be valuable, right? Like we could look for the word sacrifice here, or the word when this dies, right? Those kinds of things.
Enters the battlefield.
Like that's another good one. So, and you can actually even rank them by how playable they are in Commander. So that's a great way to go. Another good way to do is look at other people's examples. A lot of the time I'll start building a deck, I'll get about 2/3 of the way done, and I'll think, okay, I've gotten all the low-hanging fruit that I can think of myself. I'm going to finish this up by looking for some ideas that other people may have discovered that I didn't. So I go to edhrec.com, that's edhrec.com, and I'll look up the commander that I'm building around just to see if there's anything that I overlooked that would be super cool. to see what kind of cards are out there that have some sweet interaction.
But make sure you stay true to what your own vision. If somebody says you must play this card and you don't like the card, don't play it. If they tell you this is the best card to play, it's not because you didn't like it.
Right. The wonderful thing about Commander is you get to play with your favorite cards here. You get to play with what you like and make your own deck. And that's what's so beautiful about it, because it isn't this hardcore competitive thing where you need to eke out every edge. You get to enjoy yourself as much as possible.
Ethan, you took all the words out of my mouth there. So great answers, great tools you recommended as well. So definitely a lot to go on there. Thank you all so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you've all enjoyed seeing these Commander 2019 cards. That's the end of the previews for this week, but next Monday, 2 days from now, previews kick off on our website and across the internet in earnest. You will be seeing plenty more cards that way. We're going to be showing off a deck a day. So every day we'll pick a new deck, Madness, Populate, Morph, or Flashback, and show off the entire deck by the end of the day. So that's rather exciting. On behalf of Sheldon, Ethan, and Scott, and on behalf of the entire design team behind Commander 2019, thank you so much for coming out. Also, tomorrow we'll be live streaming the Top 8 Cube for Keeps event. So if you're at home and you're interested in watching people draft Cube and where they have to keep the cards afterward, it's going to be a wild ride. So we'll see you there. Thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your Gen Con.
Thank you, guys.